one of these? I'm tired of spending money on this. Oh my God.
That shirt is really brighten up your eyes.
Yeah.
It's kind of spooky from over here.
Thank you, man. Thanks, I think.
I'm really on the today.
I am. As long as it's
Yeah.
Ready?
I'm hereby calling the special city council meeting in the city of Woods Creek to order. It's August 17th, 2022, 4 p.m. Ask for everyone to rise for a moment of silence and stay standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you very much. The city secretary call roll, please.
Mayor Jeff Ruskin,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Aurora LeBrun,
Here.
Councilmember Chris Grummert,
here.
Councilmember Deborah Hines, here, Councilmember Brent Foley,
Here.
Councilmember Joe Tartar.
Here. And we do have a quorum, and so we will begin the meeting. No public comments.
Okay.
Anything written in?
No.
All right, then we will move on to the first item of the agenda.
I move that we discuss and consider appropriate action on any necessary changes to be made to the proposed 2022-2023 tax rate.
I second.
Second by Councilmember Brummer. Yes, please do.
So in your packet, the documents you have are the official documents provided by the tax assessor and collector, Jennifer O'Kane. They are very, very close to the estimates we were working on in the last meeting. She did have additional numbers in her calculations that were not provided to us. So there was a fractional change on the no new revenue rate and voter approval rate, the M&O portions in particular. Hers were actually 0.002% percent higher than what I had calculated. So it didn't shift significantly to the point where we need to change what we decided to consider for our M&O rate. So that's positive. Where there was a significant change is her calculation of our debt service is significantly lower than what we anticipated. So it's positive because it means the tax rate's being lowered for our citizens. It just means that we need to sort of adjust what we all agreed on considering in the last meeting, because her tax service rate is one second. Let me find it in here. 0.687, I believe. And we were considering something a little bit higher before. Yeah, 0.0687. So it's a shift lower. The documents you have in the rest of the meeting today are based off of her calculations, and I spoke to her on the phone today, and I confirmed that we do need to go with her debt service rate. It's not something that we can really shift. The major change in her calculation is essentially she shows that we collected in excess of taxes that we were not calculating previously. She also uses the certified value of the properties to calculate the rate versus we were using the adjusted value. So just a little bit of a learning curve for us working for the first time without a city manager on our own with this. So yeah, so the biggest changes are overall rate needs to come down because we have to adopt her debt service rate. But our M&O, the one that we voted on the last time to consider, can remain. Yeah, the two calculated together are still below her voter approval rate. If y'all have any questions?
So we had a new revenue rate that we voted on, does that stay the same?
So we did not consider adopting the no new revenue rate. We were actually kind of
A little
in
bit higher.
between. Yeah, her no new revenue rate is 1/1000th of a percent higher than what we were talking about before.
That's the 1817.
Yeah, so that's her that's the total no new revenue rate. It includes the M&O and the debt service.
So do we stick with the rate that we approved?
So the M&O we approved will produce the amount of money that we are hoping to have in the budget. So we can leave our M&O the same, but what has to happen, and we really don't have a vote on, is that we have to use her debt service rate, the one that she's calculated. And what's positive is it's significantly lower for the citizens, and it'll bring our entire total tax rate lower. So if you look at page 24 of your packet, you can sort of see this in action. You see the debt service rate from the tax assessor collector in the first column. You see the M&O that we voted on considering for council, but this is not our final vote. We still have to hold the public hearing. We still have to, notify the public in advance that this is what we just voted to consider this in our planning and preparation and our budget actions. So that M&O rate of 0.1152 can stay the same. We don't have to touch that, and it will produce the income anticipated needed for the budget. And the combination of the debt service plus that M&O is still lower than the voter approval rate. It still falls dead center between the no new revenue rate and the voter approval rate. So it's within the necessary range. It's lower than we could go, but higher than the minimum. If you want to see her two rates, they're on page 3 of your packet.
Yeah, she had
At the very top, she shows the no new revenue rate and the voter approval rate.
Yep.
And our total is 0.1839.
That's the overall rate, 1.139.
That we are currently considering with her debt service of 0.0687 and the M&O that we discussed last time of 0.1152.
So do we need to do anything, or is that the rate that Councilmember Grummer advocated? Do we stick with that, or do we change?
Seems like what we have to do is we don't have to, we're sticking with the rate that we voted on last week. All we have to do is then, is go forward with the debt service rate that she insists on.
Yeah, the only shift is the total taxes that we are now anticipated, that total rate is actually going to be lower than what we discussed in the last meeting, which is positive in my opinion.
Can you remind me what last year's rate was?
It's on page 24 of your packet. At the very end, highlighted bright yellow is 0.2071. In the last meeting, we voted for the M&O in consideration, and then there was discussion of the total rate. So if we did want to take a vote or just sort of confirm that we are going to move forward with planning of 0.1839, that could be in order.
So we've already approved 0.1839.
No,
No, we approved 0.1152 for M&O, and we had a different number for the debt service. What was our number for the debt service?
Well, when I had initially calculated, it was 0.1716, I believe, or, yeah, so it was lower than, sorry, 0.1706, or 0716, that's, I'm adding, yeah. So it was a lot, it was higher than what she has here, for two reasons. One, she is showing that we have taken in excess debt and is collection and is applying that in her calculations. We did not have that. She also does this thing where she calculates a percent of payment received. So in any given year, not everybody pays their property taxes at all or on time. And so she has those broken down calculations and she uses the percent to calculate our debt service. The other thing she did was she did not use the adjusted value. So my number was more conservative, meaning if our property values were lower, the debt service rate I produced was higher because it was anticipating lower property values. She is using a higher property value to calculate it, so it drives her debt service rate down. So the total we were talking about before, I don't have on my notes on the
That service was about 167.
Yeah, it was like 0.1867. It was slightly, I mean, we couldn't adopt it because it's above the voter approval.
Yeah, that's right.
But we were anticipating higher debt service collection. We don't.
Yeah, so they had $10,000 and change on the books that we overpay. You know, and we can't find it unless you go back into the 2021 numbers, and then we found out that their fiscal year, the year that they look at, is 2 months different from the year that we look at. So it didn't show up when we went through the financial, went through QuickBooks. That $10,000 wasn't anywhere in the books. We couldn't make either narrative, and then we found out that there was like a difference in the calendar year. They had $10,000. We found in the worksheet from before that wasn't on term.
So they end their calculations in June. We end our fiscal year like, yeah, exactly. So there's this like several month difference in the way they calculate that we just weren't anticipating. So we did not have access to these forms or specifically this worksheet she uses. Now we do. Now we know the worksheet to use. So moving forward in the future, if we were operating without a city manager again, we have this beautiful record.
I just say, thank you very much for all the work that you did on this. It's pretty amazing. We did get a little bit ahead of the game, not knowing exactly what to do and sort of working with our city manager. We just said, well, we got to do this. And Deborah stepped in and just got Excel cranking up something. And all of a sudden, we had all this stuff and it's just like, are we okay? Aren't we supposed to get something from the county? And then our financial people came in, they said, well, yeah, and so we started looking at the numbers and said, but these numbers are all good. It's like, what you did is great. This works. And then we compared it to, then we started getting county feedback. And the county said, yeah, what you did is, really pretty close. And so the fact that we're off by, hundredths of a percentage point, speaks very highly of our council member, Hines. So thank you very much.
Yes, she has more documents than I have. There was the numbers that she found, like taxes refunded, that were not in the documents she originally provided to us. So little things like that do add up when you're talking 1,000%. But yeah, overall we're in a really good place. Essentially, the taxes are lower than we thought they were going to be. That's great. We don't need to re-vote on the M&O other than to say, yes, we want to keep moving forward with it because it does fall in between these two rates. And what I mean by keep moving forward with it, I mean, use that to set our public hearing, and to basically say, this is what we're considering.
So we should have a motion to approve these numbers for purposes of the public hearing and to move forward with these numbers as far as budget.
I move that we move forward with the number of 0.0687 for the debt service, and 0.1152 for M&O with a total of 0.1839.
I second, I get the same numbers, for a second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem LeBrun. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Aurora LeBrun.
Aye.
Councilmember Chris Grummer.
Aye.
Councilmember Deborah Hines.
Aye.
Councilmember Joe Guerrero.
Aye.
Councilmember Brent Foley.
Aye.
Passes unanimous. We'll go forward with those numbers. Second item on the agenda, is that to make the motion, Councilmember Hines?
You have the- For the final motion, but, I move that we discuss and consider action on the adoption of an ordinance calling a bond election to be held within the city of Wood Creek, making provisions for conduct and the giving of the notice of the election and containing other provisions related thereto.
This is basically what this is.
I second.
We'll go back.
So we're not going to bond, we're just opening for
Right,
discussion.
this is the discussion, and then we'll,
So, Mayor Mann?
yes, please.
So if you look at page 24 of your packet again, we're back on this color-coded chart here. What this is it shows, if you look at the gray column, that's that rate we just talked about. The total taxes broken down by home values that you consider paying. Right next to that, we're looking at that 2-cent increase in debt service for the bond of 3.5 million. And then you look at the total taxes that would be due, that total rate is that peachy color. So 0.2037 is the ordinance that you have on your desk to consider today. So to be exact, it's a bond of 3.495 million.
495.
That gives us specifically $3,348,750 to work with for road reconstruction and repairs. So 3 million, it's on page 23. So you have financial statements from Hilltop Securities here showing you these two bond packages broken out on a 20-year note. So you can look at the debt service changes in the far right column on page 23. And our advisors for bond counsel are here, so if you have specific bond related questions, you can direct
Yeah,
them.
let me just introduce them again. Julie Houston and Justin Rosas, and they're with Orrick Harrington and Sutcliffe, our bond counsels, and they help us prepare all on short notice and things for them.
And so if you notice in the ordinance, the number is slightly different than what Hilltop prepares because I believe that it is adjusted specifically for your, correct, is not in this ordinance?
Yeah. When you issue the bonds.
Right, so that we only pay for counsel if the bonds are approved and issued, is that correct? So, yeah, page 23 outlines the two, so in the last meeting, we discussed raising the debt service rate 2 cents. And that is the ordinance that you have on your desk in front of you, written for that. And that is page 23 in the packet, it outlines that 2 cent increase. And then page 24, that peach column looks at like the actual impact that would be on taxpayers. And that tax rate is actually still lower than the 2021-2022 tax rate. So even if we were to issue a 2 cent bond, the taxes that our public would anticipate paying are still lower than what they paid this year in regards to the city portion, because we cannot control what the county takes. I know I keep saying this and you guys are bored, but I'm saying it for the camera. We can't control the county and we can't control the school or the fire, EMS, like medical services. Those are additional rates, additional portions of your tax.
Can I make sure I understand that right? If we do the bond, it's like a 2 cent increase, it's still lower than the taxes that were levied last year. But in exchange for that, we get to fix our roads.
Yeah, we get almost the full amount we anticipate needing. I did some calculations based on the Platinum Panel chairperson, Linnea Bailey. She produced some road links. I believe they're taken from engineering services where they actually measure these things for us. But it looks like we have about 9.46 miles left to repair. If you,
I think we probably have less because of the quick line.
no, this is based on her things
The
here.
remainder after.
Yeah.
I think, because that does include, well, that does include, let's talk 9 months, about 9 months.
Mayor President LeBrun, what I think the difference in her calculations where she got these numbers from what I've seen previously is that they have like the Via Meadow area. It's like mostly parking lot, but it's calculated in this as if we were
That's what I'm
repairing all of it. So I use the numbers that the Platinum Panel's working with. Whether or not these are accurate, I cannot tell you where they came from. I believe, according to the chairperson Bailey's comments, was they came from engineering studies, and she just pulled them directly from that. So, you know, in the end, any bond package, we're going to have to validate all of this information and make sure it's 100%. What I'm getting at, though, is if you take off the roads that the Platinum Panel shortlisted, those ones that we are allocating budget money for, that's 8.28 miles.
That's what I'm
And
saying.
if you take off calculations for the drainage improvements and those kind of projects, we're coming in under 8 miles of road left to do. And if we pay $500,000 per half mile, which is way over what we paid for Wood Creek Drive, you're only at 4.14 million. If you go down to 400,000, which is closer to what we paid for Wood Creek Drive for a half a mile, you're looking at, for each half. Is that right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Well, you're doing the math on 500,000 per half a mile. So
Yes.
you go to 400,000.
It's 3.3 million. So that puts us under this 2 cent bond package.
I think you have, the estimate that we are going to meet with Gay Priest, the Platinum Family is gonna have a meeting with them on the 25th. Specifically to clarify, to make sure that everybody's using the same numbers and that we have accurate. I agree with the 8 point, that's what we're having. I think that you have roads where you can go below 500,000. If you do the math, if you do Champion Circle, relatively soon you can get that road. Every estimated simple overlay to Champion Circle of approximately 200,000. I would say with the increasing cost of materials, it should be done for 200,000. So I think we have, if we do it right, we can do it.
The question I have is in doing it right, you know?
Yeah, if we do it right,
Bond-
it'll be a high.
So if the bond election passes and we're funded, and we, use that money, and we know that we can do it in phases if we need to, but if we do that, I mean, it's like, I don't think you can sort of say, well, it's 500. Wood Creek, if you're using Wood Creek as the basis, there was no drainage issues, it was like just laying asphalt down on top of asphalt. So there are some areas where we're gonna be able to pull that off, and that average number may go to 300,000, but there are some areas that, that same stretch of half a mile road is gonna be 600,000. So I think it'll all balance out, but I think what the question is, I think that's where we draw the question is the 2 cents going to be sufficient or not.
Also, I'd like to add that we've been having discussions with grantors, and they have several grants that they propose we all kind of approved to move forward on that actually will help with roads. So granted, it's money we can't depend on.
Right. But it's money we can go after.
It's money we're going after, and it could be something that helps in the future based on how we plan some of these things. We could maybe plan some of the roads, they'll consider it where, oh, well, this is a really bad drainage issue. Well, we're working on this grant that actually happens to work with that.
So actually, I need to clean up a little bit of what I just said. So Wood Creek Drive is actually about a mile, it's actually a little over a mile. I don't think we paved all of that, right? Because I don't know where these numbers start and end, but I know we did not start at the entrance when we repaved. So, yeah, so it was a mile for a little over 400,000. Where I'm getting this concept of half a mile at these costs is that in conversations with previous city manager Brent Lewis, he had said, well, it's actually about this much now because of the increases in materials and labor and everything that we've seen in the last year. So even at those numbers, those are still very conservative, generous estimates. Whether or not it costs 500,000 to 400,000 half mile or how we do every single half mile, I feel like they're safe estimates. If that makes sense, because we know some parts are gonna need less, some are gonna need more. We're already planning to pull off a big chunk and consider the milling and the chip seal. There might be other areas that we realize they don't need to be done, or they can be done in that other way. Like the whole parking lot of Dia Meadow might not need a complete resurface. You know, maybe the road into it or something. I don't, you know, these are things we're gonna have to figure out eventually.
You yield to.
So my question is, and maybe it's you, I'm not sure. If we, I'm being optimistic, if we end up with a certain percentage of the bond unspent, like say we magically go under the amount, it still is there for using only for roads, correct? Correct. And it could be used at a much later time. We've already got the bond. We just don't use it until.
Right, so if your projects come in under budget, and let's say out of the 3.5 million, the roads are 3 million, that 500, or that 500,000 can sit there and the Attorney General's office doesn't consider it stale until 10 years. So if there's no movement on use of those out, you know, the voter approved amount, then there's a presumption that it's stale. So you really have a 10-year period to use the funds.
And if I may, well,
When you finish, I have a follow-up. In the bond, let's say, again, being optimistic, we are pursuing the bond funds could be used, matching funds for grants,
As long as it's used for roads, yes.
for roads.
Right. And,
go over
and
that way. So, creating a chance to walk.
Just a quick question. I mean, if we get $3.5 million, we weren't required to spend that, coming under budget.
Correct.
It's okay. Right?
Correct.
It's gonna draw on that and then if we're done, we're done.
Or we put it to more roads.
you,
We've got the money, we're obligated for money.
yeah, so if there,
I mean, but it's kind of like, that we draw on that amount as we use it, or are we obligated for the whole amount regardless if we use it?
no, if you load it, it's just there for use, it's your
Right.
capacity. So you still have to come back and issue the bonds themselves. So if it's approved by the voters, we would be, and you guys would decide how much out of that 3.5 million you wanted to issue, we would come back and that amount would be sold. Then you would sell that to a bank or other financial institution, and when they buy the bond, then the money comes to you, to your project fund.
And that's when we need all of these final calculations, because for it to be issued and sold, the project needs to have neat, like, details. You know, again, it's not the exact company we're gonna hire, correct? It's the concept of like our anticipated cost, the design of the project.
Right, so that all goes into calculating. And right now, that's all it is a number. If the proposition passes, then that means that's your voted authorization. That is the cap on the amount of debt that you can issue.
But we're not obligated to, it just says we need it.
Correct.
Drawn.
I have a question for you, and this is in my self-interest. We have the Platinum Roads Pact, and we are working next Thursday. The number one priority of the panel is to do the supporting documentation, what the technical specifications, if you want to call it, for the bond. Tell me a little bit so that I can, so we have to have that by when?
You don't. I mean, that is your amount when you actually want to come forward and issue bonds. That would be those are probably the bids that you've been getting on the cost, so that you can size your bonds. Right now, it's just a number on a piece of paper that is your cap. If your costs go over that cap, then you're gonna have to either cut back or find some other sources. But that is just your voted authorized amount, and you can issue as much and as frequently up to that cap, but no more. Because the voters say, we'll let you issue an amount not to exceed,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed.
So our best option at this point is following on Councilmember Hines said, is to take these numbers, because we have done different studies and come with a definitive measure of miles of road, where we suggest that we use asphalt, or we suggest we use other methods. That would be for our.
Correct, so after if this gets passed in November, that's when
We start,
you start,
we're working on it. Okay, so-
Yeah.
And if I can, so when we're talking about this issue as needed, so that would be when we're talking about do this phase and then we go back and issue.
Well, so you can issue it all at once, and let's say, through all the work that, Mayor Pro Tem is doing on the committee, it's decided that you're gonna issue 3 million. Then you would talk to Jim and Andre, your financial advisors, they would let us know, we would prepare the documentation, and the council would all get a chance to vote. Shall the, you would still have it open to public meeting, shall the council issue, the $3 million in bonds to finance the road cost. And then at that point, you would vote to move forward. And then that's when we would prepare the documents, the method of sale would be decided, those kind of things. Now, you have 3 years to spend the money. So once you issue the bonds under the IRS regulations, you've got 3 years, and it's actually 85% needs to be spent in 3 years. We generally tell folks,
Once
Yeah.
you issue it.
once you issue it, you need to be ready to spend it within
Spend it,
3
okay.
years.
We're good at
Sounds like you're gonna be ready, it's almost shovel ready.
Yeah, they've been working on roads here for a very long time, doing the studies, getting the calculations. We just lacked total funding for it, and,
Well, what they're doing is so important because it's so important to size it properly. And so it sounds like that work between talking with the city manager that just started and the work of the team, the panel coming together, that was very important for your sizing. How much do we need to do what we want to do?
What's the penalty if we don't spend the money within the 3 years?
It's a present intent. So the IRS just says, if you're gonna issue tax exempt debt, you have to have a present intent to spend 85% of it in 3 years. That's a little bit of an oversimplification. 85. There's a certain percentage that you need to be able to spend in the first 6 months, which is generally on problem here with a lot of engineering, those kind of costs. And then they're what we call the spend down. And we can walk you through all of that. But if something happens, like there's shortages in getting supplies, the IRS certainly understands that. If there are significant delays, you can get an extension of 5 years. And otherwise, what you do is what we call yield restrict the project funds after the 3-year period. So when you borrow at a tax exempt rate that's lower than the corporate rate if you were out in corporate world, the IRS is okay with you investing those funds while they're in your project fund and getting interest on that. And it can be interest even higher than the yield on the bonds until you reach that 3-year period. If you still have funds in your project fund, then you would yield restrict it. You would say, okay, we can't invest this in a way to earn more from the bonds. And if you do, it's not a big deal. Then that's what we call arbitrage. And you pay that over to the federal government, that little delta above. The whole purpose is the federal government wants to help cities with their financing because tax exempt rates will be lower. But they don't wants you to make money on it long
Right, because the point is to use it. That's
term.
what-
Exactly, yeah. And there's also other concepts of issuance, we'll be asking you questions and make sure you spend money. What I'm hearing here is all wonderful, that you guys have really done your homework and that
We've only been talking about it for 20 years.
So
That was a little bit.
we would have 3.725 for project, pay the debt, then we already have 227, so another number of 22.
So no, it's not 3.7 million for the project, it's 3.3 million for the project. A portion is rolling over existing debt of over $200,000. And then in the final number, it also includes paying an estimate on what their services would cost. So that's how you get the 3.7 million.
Okay, that's what I was, so, and then, I do want to say, walking away from finances. But when I did say, we have to discuss, send this email, one of the concerns that I have is that, when we do this type of repairs, particularly for streets like Torpedo, Templeton Circle, intentionally, Augusta Drive, and let's not forget Brook Hollow and Woodbridge Drive, even though they're done. One of the things that did not happen on Woodbridge Drive was any traffic calming options. It was an issue, and in fact, we are staying on that vote because we were concerned that the project did not include the traffic calming options. So I think that reality is that, yeah, we have outliers. It's not everybody, it's not the majority of the people who are speeding, it's not the majority of people who are being unreasonable on the road, but that minority can cause a serious accident. And those streets, I'm concerned that there's sufficient money for traffic calm. That's my concern.
Concern is what?
But there's sufficient money.
Yeah.
I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's the checklist of questions I have that includes that, but I'll keep that, but I thank you for that.
So we'll just say it costs about 4,500,000 for Wood Creek Drive, which was a mile. And if you're looking at having 8 miles left, so that's, there's, let's see, 500,000 left over in this project. That's if we're paying Wood Creek Drive numbers everywhere. We've already established not everywhere needs
We
that.
gotta pay more.
In some places. I mean, so I understand, okay, here's the argument I want y'all to look at, or what I'm getting at, or why I'm concerned about going any higher, because we also have the numbers to consider the bond for $4 million, which is what we thought it might cost, right, initially at $500,000. So if you look at those numbers, 22,
Over 22.
just to get to $4 million, you're looking at a pretty big debt service jump. You're going from 6 cents to 10 cents, and you're getting.
Yeah, I understand.
A little over $500,000 more to use, which is good. It's important. You're then off, like, actually looking at raising taxes.
Yeah, I've been going back and forth between, looking at the numbers from here, between the 2 cent, or, basically 3.5 million to 4 million. And a couple things on mind. One is, at 3.5, people are actually still paying less with the bond than they just finished paying. So we are lowering that. That is an easier sell. Then, well, you're just going to have to pay a little bit more, and you can have, a few $100,000 more. But the other thing that is I keep coming back to is that the city has, especially this year, but in years past, has managed the budget pretty well, and has increased our reserves a little bit, to where we have been able to build a few $100,000 over years to do Wood Creek, but that's where that came from. And where that $227,000 came from, you know, to do the work that we talked about last week. So if we go in at 3.5, and this is over a period of time, over that period of time, we keep doing the job that we've been doing. You know, we should have money in reserves that we could spend to just sort of, you know, top it off and have everything we need. I think, you know, it's like, again, these are figures on paper. And until we have, you know, engineering, you know, and other things, we won't know for absolute certain, but I feel confident that, you know, we can not have our cake and eat it too. But we can come in at a rate that will be, I think, pretty popular. We already know that doing a bond is the most popular choice of the citizens. So I think we've got, you know, plenty of support, you know, for an election and to carry this over. And with just good fiscal management, I think that we can have the roads, we can have the traffic calming. I mean, we're not going to do, you know, a roundabout, you know, or something, but you know, we can do things that fit with the character of Wood Creek, you know, planters or whatever, you know, that are not, you know, $300,000 fixes, you know, to slow traffic down. So
Yeah.
I'm confident that we can make this happen.
I'm gonna piggyback on your statement and kind of reiterate that we're going out for possible grants, $500,000 for two of the ones for sure that I know about. So they may not come in next year, but they might come in the year after that. And if, given how roads often work or some of these kinds of other plans.
And if we can use road bond money for road grants, I mean, if that's legit.
So you'd be using combinations, so you'd be using the grant money to pay for part of it and the bond money to pay for part. Yeah, you can do that.
And going to traffic calming, well, one of the things that we can do, you know, maybe a suggestion we could try are these movable rubber speed bumps. I think that, you know, there's these beautiful circles, traffic calming circles, and then put plans, those are thousands of dollars. But I think that we can find some options and, maybe we can experiment over one street and see relatively reasonable.
That's
What
what
do
we're
you think, what do you think about it?
I like that. I agree with you. And I think that we can get more bang for the buck. We might do something really crazy, but there are things that can be done. And I just want to make a couple of points that, you know, this is a generational level kind of thing we're doing. It's time to do something to get our roads, you know, not only up to speed, but also make them neighborhood safe. Yeah, this is a generational kind of thing, and I like it. We want to make sure we get it right, and I think we're on the right path in terms of numbers, whatnot this time, you know, to start doing something like this. What people are going to ask me while I'm walking around, they're going to ask me several things. For one, what are we going to do about traffic calming? We're always talking already about, you know, cost-effective ways to do this. We're not spend $1 billion, but there are common sense ways, still cost a lot of money. It reinforce the idea this is a neighborhood. So I really want to make sure this is part of what we do. So when it comes time to sell this, I can go to my neighbors and go, yeah, that's part of what we're talking about. We're just not going to pay everything. You know, we're also going to make this more neighborhood safe. And I think that's really important. But what people are going to ask me is, well, how is this going to affect my tax bill? And the numbers I'm looking at is that it's actually less. We do this bond than what the tax rate was before. I think it's fair for me to say you can pay basically a little less taxes, but you can also get our roads fixed. I think if that's the point I can make, I can sell that.
So what happens for this? How's that possible?
Well, that's why I need you to.
Give them my phone number.
How's it possible that we're gonna get all these roads fixed and we're gonna actually pay less in taxes than we did before? The difference is numbers. We have more homes, higher rate, higher valuations, which generates more money for less.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to my final point is that, yeah, mathematics means a lot to me, but some people not necessarily. So we need to be able to present this politically in a way that people want to support it. You know, you're going to pay less, you're going to get the roads fixed, and it's a responsible way to do it. And also you get to vote on it, as opposed to shove it down your throat for the tax cut. You know, so that's kind of what I'm concerned about. So what I'm asking is, I'm on board with this. I just know, what do we need to do today? You know, I'm a bottom line guy. What do we need to do today to move forward and how? There you go. The authoritarian.
The only thing left to do today is take a vote and decide the amount. Are we going with the 2 cents? Or are we gonna bump it up to the $4 million that would fund essentially the whole project at, you know, or, you know, I mean, it's hard to say it would fund the whole project. We have to finish that work to really know where we're at. I'm hopeful that we would be able to fund with just the 2 cents.
What I like about this, I'm sorry, is
I
there's 2 things that are, Chris is working on grants that are gonna help a lot with that. We also allocated $200,000 that Roy talked about, out of reserve, and get immediately to the little rock stuff. So I think 3.5, we ought to be able to work within that number.
If we raise more money than we spend, is that extra money from the bonds that go in our reserves? Or what happens?
We don't draw it unless we need it, right?
Correct, correct. So if, again, remember, it's just a not to exceed amount. And so you would fine tune the amount that you want to issue. And this doesn't commit you to a debt of 3.5 million yet. It's just saying that,
That's the cap.
yeah, that is the cap. So when the voters go, they'll be asked an amount not to exceed the 3.
Which is important.
470.
We may said that we don't need all this, and then
And that's fine.
your tax doesn't go down anymore.
And that's fine.
Use it if you need it. Right.
I would like to verify, in order to make a motion, that if I said we'd like to accept this ordinance, is based on the 2 cents.
It's not the one in the packet because they brought this today fresh and completely updated for our consideration. It's on your desk. It's paperclip.
Do we need to specify for the motion the amount that's a 2 cents increase?
Yeah, so potentially, yes. So just, I think maybe everyone understands this, but what I really want to drive home is that it's like when you apply for a car loan and your bank says, okay, you have $40,000 to spend. And then you go out and car shop and you realize, oh, I only want this $27,000 car. Well, the rest, yeah. So these debt service rates that we're talking about might end up lower. You know, it's not committing everybody to pay this next year. It is dependent on what we end up issuing and selling, and we can, as I discussed, sell portions of it at a time. So as we figure out these projects and as we get this grant money, we can do it in chunks, you know, and it's not an immediate tax impact. So that's the other really kind of positive note in this, is it's not, these taxes aren't gonna jump up next year unless we issue the full amount and just knock it out of the ballpark, which would be glorious if we're prepared and have all the ducks in the row to do that. But,
And I would, if I may, I would say, follow up with Councilmember Pulley. It is critical between now and the election that we all speak with one voice and that we clearly explain to citizens what the impact is, which in fact is the beneficial impact. And because having been through an experience of a failed bond and then a successful bond on the school board, talking to the people and explaining, and everybody on the board at that time and town council was on the same page and sang the same song. That is critical, because there's already.
In terms of talking to the people, following up on what Councilmember Foley was talking about, I think it's important that we make it clear, for example, what's the time frame look like? I mean, if this passes, when are you gonna start putting in price of these things? How soon can we do this? I mean, are we ready to move quickly?
Well, I think we're, our counselors, you know, help with that time frame. So, you know, the first thing we've got to do is vote to have an election. on the ordinance. So we're voting on the ordinance, that calls the election. So that just gives us the permission to, go out for bonds if it passes, right? So between now and November, we speak with one voice that says that, you've said your number one priority is to fix the road. You've also said that you would like them done all at once, which requires a bond. You said that you want to have a say in the decision on how this is done, rather than go through a tax note, take it to the bond, and everybody has their say. And the city council, has only one choice, and that is to obey the vote, to go along with the vote. So our messaging is clear, and I think everybody around this table, feels like, this is the way to go. This is what we want to do. So I don't think we have a problem, not speaking with one voice. I mean, there could have been a previous council or a future council where you've got two people who go, I don't want to do this, and they're outvoted 3-2, and they go around browsing to the, and there. That's not going to happen here. We're not going to have 100% approval. We're going to have people that say, why, they're going to have a problem with it, but just the sense that I have of the pulse of Wood Creek right now is that this is going to go through.
You rephrased my question, if we vote positively and the citizenry agree that this will go forward too, is there any type of time lag after the city approves it that we can start spending? And is there any type of bureaucracy involved that will slow us down for?
Sure, there's a 30-day election contest period after the election, so you have to wait till after that. But after that, after you canvass, wait for the contest period, you would be free to get the ball rolling. And it would probably take about 2 months.
Chelsea is a good selling point for citizens. We move along with this.
Right. Mayor, if I may, on the one voice thing, just there are some restrictions on the council advocating for the measure.
As
So,
a governmental body.
Know that.
correct. In your own personal lives, like you were talking about, talking with your neighbors, you're free to advocate, but as a professional body, you are not ethically allowed to advocate for the passing of the bond. So, if you do want to have, let's say, one voice and you want to put words out to the city and to your citizens, you just need to make sure that the statements that you are making are accurate and true statements that are just factual and don't advocate for passing the bond.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I kind of knew that. I was sort of going back to where Councilmember Foley was saying is we're walking around the neighborhood saying hi to neighbors. They do pull us aside and say, what's up with this? And in that case, our First Amendment rights are that we can say anything we want.
Yeah.
But the council, in any communication that goes out to the city, and any emails that we blast out, anything like that, it is just like, here are the facts. This is voting day.
Anything that could be tied to being used to city funds, right? So
Yeah.
your professional capacity as a city council member. And we're happy to review any kind of marketing material or anything that you choose to send out or post around town.
What marketing material, I don't know if the city itself will do any marketing on this, can they or not?
No, just, yeah, if you want to put information out, election day is November 8th, there's going to be this bond, it will be a 2-cent increase. We're trying to fix X road, whatever it is, but just factual statements to inform the citizenry that an election is going to be on the ballot for these things.
Would we be able to put a previous year's tax rate on there so people can understand the flow of taxes? Does that make sense?
Like your tax rate last year with this.
Was, yeah, if this passes, this is what the tax rate would be,
Correct. as
because
long
it
as-
is a selling point of it.
Right. And the point, if the bond passes, it's a positive thing for everybody. You just don't want to say like,
Vote yes.
we need these roads. These roads are critical to the success of our city, things like that. You just don't want to make sure, because
Vote no, you hate Wood Creek.
exactly. Just anything that could rise to the level of having an ethical violation.
That's good advice.
Factual things like passing this vote will result in a 2-cent increase, which will be a decrease or whatever. There's definitely things you can put, they just have to be factual and not have to be.
But
People,
we can run all
can I
that.
show this to people? If people say, well, it's gonna raise my taxes, can I say, here is a breakdown of what's happening to your taxes?
Yeah, it's already published in the
It's
packet.
already published?
It's an individual.
All right.
I mean, that's just math. There's
I'm
nothing
gonna
special.
laminate it.
I colored.
I'm gonna laminate it in my purse so I don't say the wrong thing.
There you go.
The only problem we ever get into is if we severely underestimated the cost of the road. So if we're going up to the anticipated extremes of what City Manager Lewis was talking about, you're talking like $8 million. But that's if you redo all the roads at this, like completely
Income.
tearing them out. Yeah, and just like these really extremes that we don't intend to do. And I think, personally, I'm gonna advocate right now for the 2-cent increase because it gives us a large chunk of money. We're very close to being able to do it, everything on our current estimates. It lands us under where we've been paying in taxes. And as far as I know, if our community continues to grow in value and in size, and we need to issue more debt down the road, we can refinance and roll forward again, right?
Well, if we finance, and you saw that you're talking about needing additional
Yes.
funding. So if you could have another election, or there are other options, which is.
You could do a tax note in the future, is what I'm kind of getting at. If we lacked $1 million at the end of this all, you could do a tax note for that. I mean, you know what I mean? There are, if in 5 years, we realize, oh, we need more, it's still possible to get more. And then, you know, we do have reserves, which is what Mayor Ross was saying.
Well, it's maybe an obvious point, but I can remember, are we rolling the tax number into this number, or is this, no, that's great, yeah, so we're cleaning up past that, rolling up, getting a lower rate. Yeah, okay.
It's a good point. Yes, sir.
I move that the city council adopt the ordinance by the city council of the calling of the bond election, which is before the.
I second.
Second.
Second, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, that's all right. I yield. Who was the second? I yield.
Councilmember Picardo.
I yield to.
You know, that's gonna have a second.
Good, you catch it out, go south.
I really should.
What a great council.
That is
It's,
We have a motion.
we have a motion on the second,
Oh, okay.
to, move forward with the ordinance, to call the election. There's no further discussion. City Secretary, will call the roll.
Councilmember Chris Grummer.
Aye.
Councilmember Deborah Hines.
Aye.
Councilmember Brett Foley.
I just want to say this, we're about, I think it's an opportunity to access the bond market, make our roads better, make them neighborhood safe, and basically pay less taxes than we were before. So I emphatically vote yes.
There's an aye.
That's an aye.
Okay.
It's an aye.
Your mask is twisted, by the way, on your right ear.
What?
Your mask is twisted.
Aye. What do you need from me?
Your ear.
My ear.
No, you.
Your mask is twisted, that's all I'm
Oh, okay, thanks.
saying. Councilmember Joe Pitarva
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Aurora LeBrun.
Aye.
I only wish I could vote myself, but, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. City Woodruff, thank you very much. Third item is, we need to go ahead and set, on the public hearing, did we hear, I'm sorry, go ahead, let me just go ahead and take it to the council for motion to discuss and take action on it.
Mayor,
Councilman Drummer?
I move move to discuss and take appropriate action on the location of the first public hearing during the special city council meeting on August 31st, 2022. Discuss appropriate action on the date, time, and location of the second hearing as well.
Okay, so, we have a motion on the floor,
A second?
second by Councilmember Hines. Yeah, so at the last meeting, we decided on the 31st, for the public hearing. There's some question whether a public hearing in this facility, whether we have too many people, for the size of this room, and whether we need to, move it. It was posted to here. Right, so,
Oh, sorry. Also, Mr. Kane got back to us today about the timing of some of this. And so her notice coming from the county has to be published in the paper 5 days in advance and has to be on our website 7 days in advance. So my only concern with that date is we're cutting it a little bit close, right? To make, we would have to notify the newspaper immediately that,
well,
or she would,
they'll take it like that. That's Monday sometime. So if we got
Right.
something to them tomorrow or Friday,
I was so
yeah, so we can get it posted in the newspaper without a problem. The issue is, where it is.
So have you heard discussion that there's going to be a large turnout?
There's just anticipation that this is going to be of interest, when we start talking about it. Of course, I thought that we would have a crack at that too. So, we can keep it here and open the windows if we need to.
The meeting on the 31st is scheduled for 2 p.m. And it says, special public, also going to be a public hearing on the budget and tax rate, and also this, so there will be 2 public hearings.
Well, so when we talk about the tax rate, it would have to include
This
this.
Okay. So, and I have it here.
So,
Our office is the time here.
I like meeting here. We don't know for sure that the camp is available. Or there's, renting VFW, and we do that, and we have 3 people,
This is fine.
We can have up to 23 people in here for the public hearing based on the maximum capacity. I think that's fine.
Our experience with public hearings in the past has been, not a problem. In terms of attendance. So,
I move that we hold a public hearing here at the proposed time of 2 p.m. on August 31st.
and
May I
to
point of information?
publish, or,
Are you doing the first public hearing or both?
this is.
So
this
we
is the first
start the meetings at 2 and they follow subsequently after that. You don't set the time for the second one because it starts after your first one's called.
Oh. So the second public hearing being the tax rate and one being the budget, or a second public hearing after all that's done in September?
So, no, this is just the 2 public hearings for those 2.
Back to back.
Right, and then,
So this is one public hearing back to back.
right,
Okay, then that's good.
yeah, and then as far as the second one, like a future public hearing, we talked today that apparently that's not even,
We're not sure it's a
Required.
requirement. Last year, I look back on the minutes of our meetings last year, and there was a public hearing on like September 15th, pretty deep into and that may have been because of going back and forth on some budget things, but I haven't, our sheet that, former city manager Lewis and has only mentioned 1 public hearing, and right now we've got that set for, August 31st.
so I think we keep that.
Okay, so we're gonna go with that. Any other further discussion? So, if you'll call the roll, please.
Councilmember Deborah Hines,
Aye.
Councilmember Joe Pitarva, Councilmember Brett Foley,
I'm asked right. Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Aurora Brun,
Aye.
and Councilmember Chris Grummer.
Before I entertain a motion to adjourn, the August 31st meeting is posted, is it not? As a public-
Yes.
So the requirement for the 7 days for the website is already fulfilled, correct? So we just have to get it to the newspaper.
It doesn't,
It's not,
so no, the August 31st right now on the
It's
city
not
website is
posted.
just a special city council meeting.
But the agenda's not.
Yes, there's no agenda posted and there's no notification that it's a public hearing. And
So we need to just adjust that.
in that motion that we just made, did we set the location?
Yes, you did.
So this means that we would need to essentially post this immediately and notify, I can write Jennifer now, okay. It has to be on the website no later than the 24th and the newspaper needs it by the 9th.
Yeah, so those are both due.
And that means that Jennifer has to get it to the newspaper, not us.
oh, she has to?
Yes, because she's responsible for the full, if I'm reading her email correctly, she is responsible for producing our public notice. We're responsible for the city's public notice of the public hearing. But she is responsible for sending out the public that little yellow card you get. You remember on your taxes, you get that little yellow card in the mail?
So we need to get it to her.
So you'll follow up with,
I'm gonna write it right now.
okay. So, if there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got a Julie Dustin. We can-
Yeah.
Here is a copy of that ordinance.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You get your own social.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I did. Okay. Oh.